Hello. So today I want to talk about those times when you might feel like, you're working through a problem, you think you're making some progress, and then all of a sudden you get stuck. Or you might even have some regression. So when we get to that point, it can be really frustrating, right? Because we're like, okay, we're making progress, things are going really well, and then bam, right? It's why am I not making progress anymore? What happened? What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm going backwards? Why am I taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, or even 3 steps forward, 1 step backwards? A lot of times it can feel really frustrating for us when we get to that point. So I want to give you a bit of a framework, a way to sort of look at what could be going on. Basically, just some questions to ask yourself when something like that happens, just so you know what to do at that point. And then certainly if you truly are stuck, if you've kind of gone through some of these questions, you've looked at some of these pieces of the framework and you're still stuck, or honestly even before you get to that point, it's always a good idea, especially if it's a newer behavior problem that has sort of popped up or has really no good explanation for it, always a good idea to get a vet check done. So either seeing a veterinary behaviorist or seeing a veterinarian who is really well versed in behavior, which is not every veterinarian, right? Because they can't be great at everything. Some dogs or some vets will specialize in some pet related things and not others. And oftentimes behavior isn't as fascinating to many veterinarians as surgery might be. So you really want to make sure that you have a vet who's well versed in behavior, and if you don't, that's okay. You can either meet with a veterinary behaviorist yourself, or a lot of veterinary behaviorists will offer like vet to vet consults, so they can talk directly to your vet and make recommendations for plans or medications, stuff like that. So again, if you're stuck and you're like, I think I've evaluated things as much as I can, you obviously can, talk to your trainer also. But a lot of times, if you're truly stuck, there's going to be a recommendation to get a vet check, because an underlying medical condition will put you in a standstill potentially. And a lot of behavior problems do have underlying medical conditions that kind of go undiagnosed for a while, because dogs are pretty good at being stoic. All right, so let's go through the eval method. So again, this is if you've hit that sort of behavior roadblock, okay? So eval is an acronym, and the first thing it stands for, the E stands for experience. So you want to look at, what is your dog's experience with the cue? This is where the trust bank comes in, or just that bank of putting more positives in than you are taking negatives out, right? So just like any other bank, we want to be in the green. We don't want to be in the red. Okay, we want to have far more positives put in. So then if something negative does happen because it's out of our control or is unpredictable, we didn't know it was going to happen. Like let's say you have to take your dog to the vet and you're like, you know what, I'm going to prep for this. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to go in for our happy visits. We're going to do what we can to build up some of that trust. You build it up, build it up, build it up. You put positives in the bank, and then your dog suddenly has to have something hard happen. They tore their toenail and they have to go in, and you have to be there with them, hopefully, to through that process. Even if they have to be sedated, you're there through the sedation process potentially. That's going to take some money out of the bank, right? But you want to make sure that you have enough positives that have been put in, where the negatives, if they come out, you're not going to go bankrupt over it. So how often has that behavior that you're trying to address led to a reward of some kind? Okay, and keeping in mind that our dogs get to choose the rewards, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. How often has it led to nothing? So how often has it just like been pretty neutral? Neutral is actually pretty rare when it comes to behavior and behavior change. So more often than not, it's at least a little bit positive or a little bit negative. How often has it led to the removal of a reward or consequence? So that's that withdrawal from the bank, right? Versus the deposit with the reward. So dogs who love to play ball, dogs who love food, dogs who love to play with toys, as that photo represents, those would be all positives put into the bank, right? So you want to keep putting those positives in, so that those times when something does have to come out, again, you're still in the green. You're still good. So if you feel that your dog has had a lot of really positive experience, that's a good thing, okay? So then the next one is V for value. So what's the value of the reward to your dog? Okay, so the value is always determined by the learner. Remember that, not the teacher. I don't get to decide whether my dog likes hot dogs more than cheese, or cheese more than hot dogs, or cheese more than tennis balls, or her Jolly Ball more than hot dogs, okay, or steak. I don't get to pick that. She gets to pick that. So, from your dog's perspective, how highly valued is that reinforcement that you've been using? Okay, so if you've been using a really highly valued reinforcement, then you can kind of check that box and say, you know what? I know that my dog loves the value of what I've been using. So I still don't know what's going on, you know. But if you can't quite check that box, then that's something that you could improve. So again, these are all things that, you know, is there room for some improvement here if you're feeling stuck, okay? How valued is the treat versus the toy versus play versus praise in that context? Okay, I know that like with my kids love hugs. You know, they love to be hugged. But let me tell you, in front of their friends, my daughter still, I think, is completely open to it. She's 11. And my son, being just about 9, is starting to be a little like, oh, don't hug me in front of my friends, Mom. But at home, he's super cuddly. So different contexts call for different things, right? So a lot of dogs will love treats or they'll love praise. But when they're outside, like this might happen with a border collie, for example, stereotyping, but border collies are so driven to chase moving objects that a lot of times food kind of goes out the window with them. Praise certainly goes out the window, and petting usually goes out the window as well. But a tennis ball or a frisbee being thrown, something that moves that they can chase, that's super high value in that context of being outside typically. So they might take petting inside when there's not a whole lot going on, but outside it doesn't really cut it. So again, is there room for improvement there? So are you looking at the context of the situation when deciding how valuable something is? And then how does that value compare to the distraction or trigger present? So there's a lot of competition outside, right? So if we're talking about outdoor environments, you're competing with the squirrels, the birds, the smells, the cars going by, the people that have walked through, the P-mail in the neighborhood. Like, you're competing with a lot of different things. So again, is there some room for improvement there? Could you up your competition? Could you kind of compete, bring something more to the table to compete with? Okay. So then A is for action. How quickly and clearly are you taking action with your dog? Okay. So what this means is, are you being predictable and are you being clear? So predictability and clarity matters. So are you clearly marking the behavior you're looking for? So I always highly encourage everybody to use the yes marker or a clicker or any other word you want to use or sound you want to use, doesn't matter to me. But letting them know with a marker sound exactly what you liked at the moment that you liked it, so that then you can go fish out your reward and you can give it to them, okay? Because marking it adds clarity to the whole situation. And we want that clarity and we want that predictability. So how often is the behavior being practiced? How often are you actually taking action, right? Are you being proactive or are you just being reactive? You're just like taking care of it when it comes up, or are you proactively practicing these things, right? And then how consistent are your verbal and nonverbal signals to your dog? We can say one thing with our body and say something entirely different with our mouth verbally. So if I am calling my dog to come to me and I'm like, why aren't you coming anymore? I don't know what's going on. If I'm saying, Willow, come, and she isn't, what's my body language doing? Am I leaning towards her? Because if I'm leaning towards her, I'm saying, stop, don't come any closer, right? But verbally, I'm trying to say, please come closer. I need you to come over to me, right? If I'm leaning away from her and I'm calling her to come to me, my verbal, my nonverbal are matching up better. So you want to also be very sure that you are matching those things up. So again, if you have questions, this is where you ask them, right? And you check out body language stuff. So you just want to make sure that your body language is very clear, okay? And then L is for level. So are you working your dog at the level he can handle, right? So we want to think about that threshold point that our dogs might be at. And are you working under it, or are you working above and beyond it? Okay. And that threshold point is that point at which your dog can think and learn. So if your dog is so distracted or so emotional that they can't think or learn, then the level is way too hard for them at that point. And that's probably why you're having trouble. This is most often the case of struggles, and where people get stuck is it kind of they might teach them the things, but then they apply it in under too many distractions and make it too hard too fast. So we really want to slow it down. So set expectations based on the dog in front of you. So that means don't set your expectations based on your last dog or your other dog or what your neighbor's dog can do, any of that sort of stuff. You want to look at the dog in front of you and know which level that particular dog is at. So are your expectations realistic for the level your dog can handle right now, right here in the environment that you're in? Are you actively listening to your dog's needs? Are you listening with your eyes? Okay, so you're listening with your eyes, watching their body language all the time. Okay, because they will tell you if they're feeling comfortable, uncomfortable, what's going on. If they're avoiding eye contact with you a lot, things are probably too hard. Maybe something in the environment is making things difficult, or your tone of voice is coming on a little too strong for them. It's unclear for them what they should do, or they just can't handle it. And then are you working within your dog's learning zone? So there's that threshold stuff I was talking about. And have you taught the skills needed before you need them? So we can't teach somebody how to swim by throwing them in the deep end, right? We have to start them in the shallow end, teach them the skills they need to stay above water, to tread water, to kick, to hold their breath underwater, to float on their back, all of those things before we can expect them to be okay in the deep end without any help. So we have to do the same thing for our dogs. And for those of you guys who like sports and can relate to sports, I also say it with that too. Like we can't just say like, okay, today we're going to play baseball and I'm just going to throw you into a game. Like people got to learn what they're doing, right? Driving too. I guess there's another super relatable analogy is you got to learn the skills of driving and the rules of the road for safety before you can just go and jump on the highway. And I know that my mom told me when I was learning to drive that she learned to drive by like parallel parking on a hill. In a standard, and that sounded terrifying to me, and I'm glad that I wasn't taught that way. But we can't do that. It just doesn't make sense, and that's why most people are not taught that way anymore. Okay. All right. So to sum this up, the eval stands for experience, value, action, and level, and it's just a nice way for you to remember what some of the terms are. So look at the experience your dog has had. Has it been more positive than negative? Look at the value of the reinforcers, the value of what's in the environment, the value of, whatever context they're in. Okay. Action. Have you taken action on things? Are you being proactive? Okay. And then level. How hard or difficult is this for your dog in this very moment? Okay. So hopefully that's helpful. And certainly reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.